In the scorching heat of a July afternoon in 2019, the veneer of suburban tranquility was brutally fractured, leaving an indelible mark on the community. The Hendersons, Thaddeus and Margot, found themselves at the epicenter of this calamity. Thaddeus, a 45-year-old investment banker, was renowned for his diligence and active role in the community. His wife, Margot, a 43-year-old part-time yoga instructor, was celebrated for her lively spirit and contagious laughter. They had been a prominent part of the community for over a decade, their seemingly idyllic union the object of admiration for many. The Coopers, Elaine, and her 19-year-old son, Liam, resided in the neighboring house. Elaine, a widow, and Liam, a college sophomore on summer break, had settled in the neighborhood 5 years prior. Despite their somewhat reclusive nature, they were generally held in high regard by their neighbors. No one could have foreseen the cataclysmic collision of these seemingly mundane lives. Thaddeus's life had been fueled by ambition. Born into a working-class family in the rural landscapes of Iowa, he had ascended the social hierarchy through sheer grit and an almost compulsive dedication to work. By his early 30s, he had carved out a niche for himself as an emerging talent in a financial firm. His colleagues respected his incisive analytical skills, and his clients appreciated his straightforward approach to wealth management. Margot, née Sinclair, had followed a different path. Raised in a household that cherished creativity and self-expression by a college professor and an artist, she pursued modern dance at university, nurturing dreams of a stage career. However, a knee injury in her final year thwarted these aspirations, prompting her to shift her focus towards yoga and wellness coaching. In the year 2003, their lives intertwined at a charitable event. Thaddeus, already prosperous but lacking refinement, was instantly captivated by Margot's vivaciousness and allure. For Margot, Thaddeus symbolized security and the assurance of a luxurious lifestyle that would enable her to chase her passions without monetary concerns. A year later, they exchanged vows in a grandiose wedding ceremony that became the topic of discussion among their acquaintances. The initial phase of their matrimony was filled with joy. Thaddeus's profession continued to thrive, and he reveled in offering Margot the lifestyle he believed she merited. Margot, in turn, dedicated herself to being the ideal corporate spouse, organizing dinner parties and participating in social gatherings that were vital for Thaddeus's professional networking. She also started instructing yoga part-time at a high-end studio, discovering satisfaction in aiding others in attaining equilibrium and inner tranquility. However, as time elapsed, fissures started to emerge in their meticulously crafted existence. Thaddeus's working hours began to extend, his ambition driving him to pursue increasingly significant deals and clients. He seldom returned home before 9 p.m., and even when he was physically there, his thoughts were frequently elsewhere, incessantly checking his phone for emails or market news. As she neared her 40s, Margot found herself progressively discontented. The yoga sessions and philanthropic committees that once occupied her days now seemed empty. She started to reassess the decisions that had led her to this juncture, pondering if she had exchanged her aspirations for a golden prison. Their inability to bear children, despite numerous attempts, added further tension to their relationship. As the summer of 2019 unfolded, the Hendersons' marriage had devolved into a meticulously preserved pretense. To the external world, they continued to project the image of an ideal couple. Thaddeus persisted in his exceptional performance at work, having recently secured a deal that positioned him for a partnership. Margot's yoga classes attracted more attendees than ever, her pupils drawn to her amiability and seemingly tranquil demeanor. However, in the privacy of their home, they had become practically estranged. Dialogues, when they transpired, were superficial and revolved around timetables and social commitments. Physical closeness had become an infrequent event, each contact burdened with unvoiced grievances and unmet anticipations. Neither Thaddeus nor Margot was prepared to acknowledge, even to themselves, the extent of their estrangement. It was more convenient to uphold the illusion, to perform the roles of a contented couple, than to confront the void that had widened between them. Little did they suspect that this unaddressed rift in their relationship was on the verge of triggering a calamity that would devastate not only their lives, but the entire community of Riverside. The Coopers had relocated to the residence adjacent to the Hendersons in 2014, subsequent to the demise of Elaine Cooper's spouse, Dr. Reginald Cooper, a distinguished oncologist. Reginald had fallen victim to the very ailment he had dedicated his life to combating, leaving Elaine to nurture their son Liam single-handedly. Elaine, a reserved librarian, initially grappled with acclimating to life in the new environment. The relocation from their unassuming dwelling in St. Paul had been essential to evade the recollections that tormented every nook of their former abode. But the opulent suburb seemed foreign to her. She sought refuge in her literature and nurturing the garden that soon became the object of envy among the neighbors. Liam Cooper was 14 at the time of their arrival, a gangly, introverted adolescent, more at ease with technology than with individuals. The shift to a new educational institution had proven challenging, and he frequently found himself the object of ridicule by bullies who derided his second-hand attire and reserved nature. It was during this period that Thaddeus Henderson had extended his support to Liam, providing him with a job mowing lawns and performing miscellaneous tasks around the neighborhood. In the course of the subsequent 5 years, Liam underwent a remarkable transformation. The gawky adolescent matured into a handsome young man, his innate intellect finally discovering an avenue in his computer science curriculum at the university. Despite his burgeoning self-assurance, Liam remained dedicated to his mother. He was concerned about her seclusion and solitude, and made it a priority to return home most weekends, even when his companions were organizing celebrations or excursions. It was during one of these weekend visits in the early days of June that he perceived Margot Henderson in a different light for the first time. Elaine had always been appreciative of the Hendersons' benevolence, especially Margot's endeavors to involve her in community events. She frequently mentioned Margot's magnanimity, oblivious to the intricate emotions simmering beneath the facade of her son's courteous acknowledgments. The ember that kindled the liaison between Margot Henderson and Liam Cooper was as unanticipated as it was fervent. The event occurred on a sultry evening in the early days of June during one of the Hendersons' renowned summer barbecues. Thaddeus, as was customary, was commanding attention near the grill, entertaining his associates with narratives of his latest financial triumph. Margot, feeling particularly detached amidst the gathering, had withdrawn to the relative tranquility of the pool house to replenish the ice bucket. Liam, who had been reluctantly persuaded to attend the gathering by his mother, selected that moment to escape from the clamor and compulsory social interaction. He entered the pool house, unaware that it was occupied, and discovered Margot grappling with a large bag of ice. Their gazes converged, and in that instant, a change occurred. He approached to assist her with the ice, their hands touching. They remained there momentarily immobilized, the chill of the ice starkly contrasting with the warmth intensifying between them. Margot was the one who shattered the silence, her voice husky as she expressed her gratitude. Liam, typically so eloquent, found himself faltering in response. That fleeting encounter established the foundation for what was to unfold. Over the ensuing weeks, Margot and Liam found themselves concocting excuses to spend time together. It commenced innocuously enough, Margot requesting Liam's assistance with her laptop, Liam volunteering to aid in her garden. Each interaction was infused with a subtext of attraction that they both endeavored to disregard. Their inaugural kiss transpired nearly a month subsequent to the barbecue. Liam had been assisting Margot in arranging for one of her yoga sessions in the park. As they concluded, an abrupt summer tempest erupted. They dashed for refuge under a nearby gazebo, chuckling and out of breath as the rain cascaded around them. Margot gazed at Liam and experienced a rush of longing she hadn't felt in years. Before she could reconsider, she inclined towards him and kissed him. From that juncture, their clandestine relationship intensified rapidly. They were imprudent, propelled by a blend of Liam's youthful fervor and Margot's urgency to reclaim her vitality. They convened in concealed locations around the vicinity, in the rear seats of the neighborhood cinema, in a secluded nook of the public library, and most precariously, in the Henderson residence when Thaddeus was occupied at work. Each rendezvous left them yearning for more, the disparity in their ages disregarded in the fervor of their clandestine moments. Margot sensed a revitalization, rediscovering facets of herself she believed were irretrievably lost. Liam, for his part, was captivated by Margot's expertise and the illicit essence of their bond. However, as the summer progressed, the pressure of preserving their secret started to manifest. Close encounters became more frequent. A neighbor nearly discovering them in a clinch, a dubious glance from Elaine when Margot's name surfaced excessively in discussions. The remorse also began to burden them both. Liam grappled with the awareness that he was deceiving Thaddeus, a man who had been consistently benevolent towards him. Margot found herself fabricating more and more lies to her spouse, each falsehood another fracture in the edifice of her matrimony. Yet despite the perils and the guilt, neither appeared capable of terminating the affair. They were ensnared in a maelstrom of ardor and necessity, oblivious to the catastrophic repercussions that loomed on the horizon. July 15, 2019, commenced sweltering and muggy, the atmosphere laden with the portent of an imminent storm. It was a Monday, and Riverside roused to life as its inhabitants prepared for another week of labor and routine. For Thaddeus Henderson, the day initiated like any other. He arose early, donned one of his flawlessly tailored suits, and departed for the office before Margot had even roused from slumber. Margot awoke later, her thoughts already swirling with arrangements for the impending day. Thaddeus had notified her the previous night that he would be occupied at work until late, a significant client dinner that could secure his partnership agreement. For Margot, this signified an opportunity. She dispatched a message to Liam, her pulse quickening as she proposed he visit in the afternoon. Liam, who had been tormented by the affair for several days, perceived the message as an occasion to conclude matters in person. He replied with a succinct "okay," determining to terminate the relationship before the circumstances exacerbated further. The day elapsed sluggishly for both of them. Margot proceeded with the routine of her morning yoga session, her customary tranquility supplanted by a restless energy that her pupils couldn't help but detect. Liam, at his summer occupation, discovered it challenging to concentrate on the coding on his display, his thoughts persistently wandering to Margot and the imminent dialogue. At 2:30 p.m., Liam navigated his way to the adjacent residence, scrutinizing his surroundings cautiously to confirm that none of the neighbors were observing. Margot hastily ushered him inside, her countenance flushed with a blend of exhilaration and apprehension. It was Liam who disrupted the quiet, initiating to express that they needed to converse. However, Margot, misconstruing his objective and impelled by a frantic desire to feel coveted, silenced him with an ardent kiss. Despite his hesitations, Liam discovered himself reciprocating, his determination faltering in the presence of Margot's fervor. What ensued was a haze of discarded attire and entwined limbs as they progressed towards the master bedroom. All contemplations of concluding the affair were momentarily overlooked as they immersed themselves in one another. Concurrently, across the vicinity, Thaddeus Henderson sat in his workplace, scowling at his computer monitor. The statistics for the client presentation were inconsistent, and he recognized he would have to revise a substantial segment of his endeavor. Aggravation escalating, he made an impulsive judgment. He would return home, reorganize, and revisit the office subsequently to complete the task before the dinner. At 3:45 p.m., Thaddeus's vehicle drew into the driveway. He noticed Liam Cooper's dilapidated Honda stationed a short distance down the road but dismissed it. Likely assisting Elaine with some task, he pondered as he unlocked the entrance door. The residence was hushed as he entered, but something seemed amiss. A half-consumed glass of wine rested on the coffee table, unusual for Margot at this time. Then he discerned it, a stifled noise emanating from upstairs. Scowling, he ascended the stairs, the clamor intensifying as he neared the master bedroom. The sight that greeted Thaddeus when he opened the door would be indelibly etched into his recollections. His spouse, the woman he had cherished for 15 years, was in their bed with Liam Cooper, the 19-year-old individual he had guided and trusted. With a thunderous bellow of wrath and anguish, Thaddeus propelled himself forward, his hands, so accustomed to manipulating figures and sealing business transactions, now clenched into fists as he seized Liam, wrenching him off the bed. Margot shrieked, endeavoring to conceal herself and separate the two men, but her attempts were futile. Thaddeus's initial blow struck Liam squarely on the jaw, causing the younger man to stagger backward. Impelled by adrenaline and dread, Liam retaliated. The two men wrestled, colliding into the dresser, scattering framed photographs and knickknacks across the floor. Amidst the pandemonium, no one observed the heavy crystal bookend that tumbled from the dresser's summit. No one detected it until Thaddeus, in a frenzy of uncontrollable fury, seized it and struck it down on Liam's head with a nauseating impact. The resonance appeared to reverberate in the abrupt stillness that ensued. Liam collapsed to the floor, blood rapidly accumulating around his inert form. Margot's shriek penetrated the atmosphere as the complete horror of the events that had just unfolded struck them all. In that instant, as tempestuous clouds amassed outside and sirens echoed in the distance, the destinies of everyone involved were irrevocably altered. The idyllic veneer of Riverside had been demolished, and nothing would ever revert to its former state. The shrill blare of police sirens disrupted the customary serenity of the neighborhood. Residents peeked from behind drapes, inquisitiveness combined with unease, as patrol cars and an ambulance screeched to a standstill in front of the Henderson dwelling. The initial officers on the scene were confronted with a spectacle of horror that would haunt them for years to come. Inside, they discovered a stunned Thaddeus Henderson, his hands stained with blood, seated on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. Margot, barely dressed and hysterical, was in the chamber that exhibited all the indications of a brutal altercation: overturned furnishings, fractured glass, and traces of blood on the hardwood floor. Detective Ava Rossi, an experienced member of the police department's homicide division, assumed command of the situation. Her primary concern was obtaining medical assistance for Liam Cooper. As paramedics labored fervently to stabilize him, Rossi initiated the intricate procedure of reconstructing the sequence of events that had culminated in this catastrophe. Thaddeus, still in a condition of disbelief, was apprehended without opposition. Margot was interrogated independently. Their narratives, fragmentary and emotional, depicted a scenario of prolonged marital dissension that had detonated into brutality. As the news disseminated through the vicinity, a throng started to assemble at the police barricade. Among them was Elaine Cooper, who succumbed to sorrow upon learning of her son's critical state. She was promptly escorted to the medical facility, where Liam was engaged in a battle for survival in the intensive care unit. The inquiry progressed swiftly. Forensic specialists scrutinized the Henderson residence, accumulating evidence and capturing images. The crystal bookend, now a prospective instrument of homicide, was meticulously sealed and labeled. Neighbors were questioned, their testimonies offering insight into the dynamics between the Hendersons and the Coopers. One neighbor recollected discerning elevated voices from the Henderson household earlier that afternoon, but had disregarded it as a blaring television. Another mentioned observing Liam entering the Henderson home around 2:30 p.m., noting it because he deemed it unusual given Thaddeus's typical work routine. As darkness descended, the severity of the predicament became evident. Liam Cooper was declared deceased at 9:47 p.m., having never reclaimed consciousness. The allegation against Thaddeus Henderson was escalated from assault to second-degree murder. In the ensuing days, additional information surfaced. Margot, tormented by remorse and subjected to intense examination, confessed to the liaison with Liam. Her declaration, provided through tears at the police headquarters, supplied a timeline of their relationship and the occurrences preceding that tragic afternoon. Thaddeus, counseled by his hastily engaged lawyer, maintained silence. However, his associates at the firm portrayed a portrait of a man under immense strain, laboring extensive hours in quest of a partnership that had appeared within grasp. None, however, had anticipated the extent of his marital tribulations or the potential for aggression that had been unleashed. The prosecution against Thaddeus Henderson was solidifying, but Rossi recognized that in the court of public sentiment, there would be no unequivocal antagonists or protagonists in this narrative. Only casualties, each in their distinct manner, of the secrets and deceptions that had ultimately surfaced in the most calamitous way imaginable. But no one could have foreseen the plot development that was about to unfold, a twist that would astonish everyone, including the Hendersons. The trial of the Hendersons commenced on a brisk autumn morning, half a year subsequent to the incidents that had jolted Riverside to its foundation. The county courthouse, an imposing edifice of crimson brick and pristine columns, was encompassed by journalists and inquisitive spectators. Inside, the strain was tangible as the judge summoned the court to order. Prosecuting attorney Veronica Talbot, esteemed for her incisive intellect and acerbic eloquence, delineated the state's argument in her inaugural statement. She depicted a vivid portrayal of Thaddeus Henderson as a man engulfed by fury and envy who had savagely assassinated a youthful man in the zenith of his existence. Talbot's expressions were deliberate yet influential, her gaze traversing the jury as she vowed to substantiate Henderson's culpability beyond any plausible uncertainty. Defense attorney Sterling retorted with a chronicle of his own. He depicted Thaddeus as a committed spouse and cornerstone of the society impelled to the verge by a deception of the profoundest nature. Sterling implied that the demise was a heart-rending mishap, the outcome of a disagreement that had escalated beyond control. As the trial advanced, a succession of witnesses assumed the stand. Forensic authorities testified regarding blood splatter configurations and the compulsion necessary to inflict Liam's lethal trauma. Neighbors recounted the occurrences of that day, and character witnesses vouched for the personalities and reputations of both Thaddeus and Liam. However, it was Margot Henderson's evidence that mesmerized the courtroom. Over 2 arduous days on the stand, she disclosed the deterioration of her nuptials and the progression of her bond with Liam. Her voice quivered as she recounted the instant Thaddeus had discovered them and the terror of observing the altercation transpire. Under cross-examination, Sterling endeavored to depict her as an adulterous wife whose deeds had propelled her husband to momentary madness. But Margot remained steadfast, acknowledging her role in the calamity while insisting that nothing vindicated Liam's death. Elaine Cooper's evidence was concise, yet potent. Still bereaved, she discussed her son's benevolence and his aspirations for the future, all curtailed in an act of brutality. Her tranquil poise in the face of unfathomable bereavement stirred numerous in the courtroom to tears. As the trial approached its conclusion, all attention focused on Thaddeus Henderson. Contrary to his attorney's counsel, he opted to testify. His evidence was a juxtaposition of contrasts, instances of ostensible contrition intermingled with glimmers of the indignation that had culminated in Liam's demise. He divulged the strain he had been subjected to at his occupation, the escalating estrangement in his matrimony, and the astonishment of uncovering his spouse's adultery. When narrating the altercation with Liam, Thaddeus asserted he had never intended to inflict severe injury, that he had merely lost command. As the trial advanced, expert witnesses from the realm of psychology were summoned to offer insights into the psyche of those implicated in the calamitous events. Dr. Cho elucidated that Thaddeus's conduct could be comprehended through the perspective of what psychologists label intermittent explosive disorder, distinguished by instances of brutal, hostile behavior disproportionate to the scenario. She alluded to Thaddeus's high-pressure employment, his unexpressed marital discontentment, and the shock of discovering his wife's infidelity as contributing elements to his aggressive outburst. However, under cross-examination, Dr. Cho acknowledged that while these factors could clarify Thaddeus's behavior, they did not pardon it. She underscored that numerous individuals encounter comparable stressors without resorting to aggression. The defense summoned a specialist in marriage and family therapy to bear witness regarding the psychological repercussions of adultery. Fredman outlined the profound sense of deception and identity loss that an individual may encounter upon discovering a spouse's extramarital affair. He compared it to a form of psychological trauma capable of activating acute emotional reactions. The psychological evaluations presented during the trial provided a multifaceted depiction of human conduct and inspiration. They emphasized how an amalgamation of personal background, societal anticipations, and immediate conditions can converge to generate a perfect tempest of catastrophe. Following 7 grueling weeks of testimony, evidence presentation, and legal debates, the destiny of Thaddeus Henderson was entrusted to the jury. As Judge Blackwell dispatched the 12 men and women to deliberate, a tense hush descended over the courtroom. After a brief recess to contemplate all aspects, Judge Blackwell reappeared to pronounce her verdict. Referring to the brutal essence of the offense balanced against Thaddeus's absence of prior criminal background and the exceptional circumstances of the case, she condemned him to 18 years in state penitentiary with the possibility of parole after 12 years. As Thaddeus was escorted away in handcuffs, the complete gravity of the tragedy appeared to envelop the courtroom. There were no triumphant parties here, only lives irrevocably modified by a moment of fervor and a fleeting instant of brutality. Outside, as reports of the verdict disseminated, the crowd's responses were diverse. Some believed justice had been administered, while others contended the sentence was excessively severe or excessively lenient. But all concurred on one issue. The occurrences that had unfurled in Riverside would leave an enduring imprint on the community for years to follow.